The following program will make you want to grow things and experience new and wonderful dreams about your plants, garden, and garden design. Listener participation is always strongly advised. Good evening and welcome to Down the Garden Path with your hosts Joanne Shaw and Matthew Dressing, right here on Reality Radio 101. To contact us live this evening, send us an email. Our email address is instudio101@gmail.com. And now, right to your hosts of Down the Garden Path, Joanne Shaw and Matthew Dressing.
Thank you very much, Gary, and welcome everyone to Down the Garden Path, where each week we discuss down-to-earth tips and advice for your plants, gardens, and landscapes. As landscape designers and gardeners, we think it is important and possible to have great gardens that are low maintenance, and we want to help you make it happen. I'm Joanne Shaw, landscape designer and owner of Down to Earth Landscape Design for the past 11 years. It is a design-only business here east of the GTA. And with me tonight, as usual, is Matthew Dressing. Welcome, Matthew.
Hey, Joanne. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed your vacation.
I did.
And everyone, I am Matthew Dressing, horticulturist and landscape designer and owner of Natural Affinity Designs. Natural Affinity is a landscape design and garden maintenance firm servicing Toronto and the eastern GTA. And Joanne and I enjoy doing Down the Garden Path each week, bringing you interesting, relevant, and helpful topics to help you achieve a great garden. We learn right along with you from each other, from our research, and from the guests that join us here on the show. So as always, we welcome your questions via social media at instudio101@gmail.com, Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, or by email, like I just said. So
excellent.
Welcome back, everyone.
Welcome back. And I'm excited about this show because it kind of builds on last week's show that I, of course, missed.
Yes.
So you had a great show with Daniel Eggert from Harris Seeds, talking about seed starting and growing plants with seeds.
Right.
But now I'm excited to have more of a garden, a design focus show. So we are going to be talking about kitchen garden design.
Taking all those vegetables and seeds you're growing and how we're going to design them outside.
That's right. So with us, Ecker Ogden is the co-founder of the Cook's Garden Seed Catalogue and author of 5 books on cooking and garden design, including The Complete Kitchen Garden. Her articles and kitchen gardens have appeared in national publications, including Martha Stewart Living, Eating Well, Organic Gardening, and Better Homes and Gardens, and the New York Times. She is a kitchen designer and lives in Vermont, and she joins us here tonight. Hi, Ellen.
Hi, Joanne.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's a treat to be here.
Oh, I'm glad. And we were fortunate to meet each other in person at the Landscape Designer Conference a few months ago.
That's right, in Toronto.
Yeah, so that was great, and I hope you enjoyed your experience.
Oh, I sure did. I wish I'd packed in an left an extra few days for being able to tour the city, but it was a wonderful conference, yes.
Yes. Well, you have to come back when there's less snow, because when you arrived, there's a bit of a snowstorm. So hard to tour then, but so thank you for joining us, and I'm excited to talk more about kitchen garden design and your book.
Thank you.
Can you tell us, because your book is a different concept in that it incorporates a lot of different things. Can you tell us how you came up with that concept?
Well, I think, for some of your listeners, perhaps describing what the difference is between a kitchen garden and a vegetable garden is.
Ooh.
And for many years, I had a very large vegetable garden. We were market growers. We supplied lots of baby vegetables and wonderful salad greens to the local chefs. We grew about 4 or 5 acres, but it was always a lot of work.
Ooh, yes.
And when I moved off the farm, I had a much smaller lot, and I thought, gosh, how am I going to fit a garden in here? And I realized I could grow a kitchen garden, which is really a smaller, sort of European-inspired, smaller potager garden where I'm just growing the salad greens and the herbs and the little bit of edible flowers I'll use for garnish. And so it's a much smaller version of a vegetable garden. I'm not growing everything. And so when I put in my garden, I realized, wow, if I could just teach other people that they don't have to slave over a big garden but can grow a tiny, delicate, lovely, beautiful garden as sort of a sanctuary space, and maybe they'll like to garden.
Excellent.
Because believe it or not, there are people out there who don't want a garden. I can't imagine, but there are.
And it seems daunting for them. So how you broke it down, that makes it seem a little bit more achievable.
Right. It's a smaller garden, and it's easier to maintain, and it's not so small that I'm just growing things in containers. But certainly, there's plenty you can grow in containers as well. There's a lot of edible crops that are really more suited for small growing areas. If we just sort of, tune into what those are.
Okay. And would they be things that kind of turn over quickly in the garden? Like you mentioned the greens and the lettuces.
Right. Lettuce and salad greens. There's a huge variety of lettuce and salad greens. And unfortunately, many seed catalogs aren't really showing us as much as we, of the offerings that we can get. Europeans have been growing tons of different kinds of mesclun and mosh and mustards from the Asian green families, and there's hundreds of different kinds of lettuces that can range from butter crunch to a romaine, or can be grown in winter or summer or spring. There's just a huge range of different salad greens, and all of them grow within 30 to 45 days. So they're a wonderful bonus to have growing in our small garden areas.
Yeah, I could see that. And so so let's just talk a bit about the kitchen garden design aspect of it.
Yes. So how does one start?
Yes. How would you go about starting to do a kitchen garden design based on that plant? Choosing your plants first or choosing the layout?
Oh, no, plants come. Thank you for asking that, Joanne. What a good question. I actually have what I call my sort of 12 steps to success, or 6 steps to success, which really starts with looking at, as you would any kind of landscape design. Where's your house? Where's north, south, east, and west, and how much sun do you get, and all those good questions. But really what I think is most important when designing a garden is convenience. Like most people put their vegetable garden way out in the backyard behind the garage or someplace far away, and then they'll often have trouble with deer or rabbits because it's too far away from the house. So I think the most important thing is if you can find a space to plant this little garden area really close to where your sitting area is. Maybe it's off your patio or outside your kitchen door, or to the entrance to your front gate or near your garage, someplace that's really close to the house, so that every time you walk by you can just quickly grab a little sprig of something as you pass. So siting the garden is of course number one.
Okay, that's a great tip though, because you're right. People put it way in the back 40 and forget about it.
Yeah, they don't think vegetable gardens are pretty, so the idea is to make it pretty. And then step 2, I always say, is try and think about kind of beds you want. So often people go out and buy raised beds, and they fill it with bag soil, and they put in plants, and they're growing food. But that's not really the idea of a kitchen garden. For me, it's more about a long-term investment in your property and designing it so that it really integrates with the house and the landscape. And so often I think raised beds sort of stick out a little bit. They're usually kind of elevated from the soil. So if you can integrate the garden beds to really be part of the design of the rest of the landscape, they won't look like an eyesore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true too. Much more European as well. You don't see those wooden raised boxes in European gardens, do you?
Well, I don't know. I bet they have them there, but I don't happen to like the way they look sometimes. I mean, I think they're certainly important if you have bad soil
Mm-hmm.
or different. There's lots of reasons people put raised beds in.
For sure.
And I'm not knocking raised beds. I just think there are often ways to sort of soften the edges of raised beds as well, like using containers around a raised bed, or some way to plant trailing plants like those beautiful nasturtiums that will fold over the sides and sort of soften the edges so it doesn't just look so rigid. So, working. There's lots of landscape tricks that you can use to, as I say, just kind of smooth out the edges of those elevated sides of a raised bed.
Excellent. Okay. And
But
so
raised
what's...
beds, when you're building them with stone, for instance,
Mhm.
stone is a wonderful thing to use because it heats up. So it heats up the soil. So especially in cool climates, I'm in Vermont and you're in Canada, and we know that we have a very short growing season. So being able to use as much as we can from solar energy is really important. So if you're making raised beds instead of wood, consider doing them out of stone.
Mhm.
You'll have an earlier season and a later season as well. It will extend that growing time.
Yeah, that's very practical. And more, and aesthetically too, I think beautiful
Yes.
with the wood. So what about your next point as far as size goes?
You mean the steps?
Yes.
Well, I also think sometimes people forget to put in a garden shed near their gardens. Gardeners use quite a bit of tools throughout the day. I know I'm constantly going to the garden shed for twine or scissors or, another stake to hold up the lilies or, something. I'm constantly going into the garden shed. And if you can design a nice little shed, or even something that's fairly substantial so you can use it maybe as a sitting area as well, someplace you can put your garden books for reference, or keep a little refrigerator for snacks and cool drinks or something. I think the English gardeners and probably many European gardeners have little garden sheds right near their gardens, and it's really convenient. And again, I just think we depend on our garages to hold everything we need, but try and set up a smaller place closer to the garden will keep you organized and keep it efficient, and really the idea is to have more fun and not to think, oh my God, I've got to make another trip over to the garage to get that tool. Really simplify your life by keeping everything nearby.
Yeah, that definitely would be helpful. Thinking, and that's part of the planning, isn't it? Thinking about all of these steps is, my whole motto is always great landscapes start with a plan. So not, having the garden in the middle of nowhere and then you running around trying to find these things. That planning first is really a big part of success.
Right. And you've probably talked about this already on your show before, Joanne, and I know you do wonderful design work. The 5-year plan, the long-term plan, that we can't always do everything at once, but I often say that just dream a little bit and put things down on paper, and you may not be able to do it all at once, but you can sort of chip away at it. And on my property, I had a 5-year plan, but I'm actually in year 13 of my 5-year plan, because sometimes it takes a little longer. But it keeps me going. Gardening is a year-round activity. It's not something that we start in the spring and we end in the fall. It's something that, as gardeners, we're always thinking about. I mean, I'm sure you're the same way. It's like you're always thinking about different ways you can do things in your yard that will make it more exciting. Or, there's areas that I I just haven't done yet, and I just can't wait to get at them this spring. And so it just keeps me getting up in the morning and thinking about it.
Absolutely. That's, with something. And I think especially with food, because there's so much talk about food gardening right now. So anything related to that, I think gets everybody super excited.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, food.
Food.
This time of year. Pretty sad going into the grocery stores.
Yes.
Having to buy things wrapped in plastic.
Yes, for sure. So what's another element to your kitchen design strategy?
Well, I think gates and fences are also really important. I often see gardens that have very high, tall fences because they need to keep the deer out. And it's kind of a reverse psychology that instead of thinking about fences as keeping things out, try and reframe that thought that perhaps containing that beautiful little garden area, so that when you're inside that garden area, you feel kind of nurtured as a sort of sanctuary space. So I often say that with my art school background, that the fence around a garden is like putting a beautiful picture frame around your garden that just kind of frames it in and says, this is a place I want to be. And so again, it's more of an invitation to be inside the space rather than something to repel what should not be in that space. And I know that sounds a little convoluted, because I know we need to keep out those deer and those rabbits, but try and create a fence that is aesthetically nice looking. There's too many that look sort of like prison walls or batting cages, and I certainly wouldn't want to go and be inside those. It would make me feel kind of claustrophobic.
Yeah. So something more inviting.
Yes. And a nice garden gate, some way to get into that space that's really pretty and inviting and makes you want to go into that space and just kind of breathe and relax instead of, push through and get the work done.
Right. Well, that's funny. Do you ever, so as far as, what about hedges? I know I've done some vegetable gardens with boxwood hedges.
Yes, hedges are a great idea. Tell me a little bit about what you have done for kitchen gardens and using hedges. I think hedges are wonderful. I have arborvitae and boxwood and lilacs around my garden.
Oh, that's a good idea.
But I'm always curious to know what other people do as well.
Yeah, I have several clients that have asked for them to be more incorporated into their flower and shrub garden. So I kind of would do, and I am a hedge girl. I do, even with my other gardens, I do like having hedges either placed at the back or as background or at the front. I find they kind of add that clean line. Mm-hmm. So I think when I continue the boxwood hedge from the shrubs and perennials all along, and then have the vegetables behind it, the boxwood kind of ties them both together.
Yes.
So that's just one of the tricks that I've used. They've been very small. I've had a lot of clients that want a few tomato plants and a few things in their space, but they want to know how to kind of tie it together. Mm-hmm. And so that's the one thing that I've experimented with.
That's nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it creates like garden rooms, having the low hedges around that space. And if they're tall hedges, then it sort of creates like a secret garden effect. You want to go into that space to see what's there.
Yeah, exactly. And Matthew, have you had any experience with vegetable gardens, designing them?
Very few. And a couple of them that I have designed were more kind of incorporating vegetables and even like fruit and berry kind of things into the design. So not having such a designated space like a vegetable garden, but having something like a few blueberry shrubs to replace just that shrub that size, but use that fall color of the blueberry shrub to enhance the garden at other times of years. So little placements like that, but mainly more perennial woody type veggies and trees and things like that.
Yeah. So I think that the key is for me is that so often I see people thinking that vegetable gardens are very different than flower gardens. But if you can just use many of the same classic design techniques that you do for a flower garden, like use a focal point or the boundaries and the color combinations and things. Just use those same design elements in a vegetable garden. It will make it a more beautiful space. It doesn't have to be treated any differently, really.
Yeah, we have to remember that a vegetable garden is still a garden, and we can still use all those design points to enhance them and enjoy them, despite the fact that it's maybe not a large collection of flowering shrubs or annuals or something like that, for sure.
And I think that people forget about the foliage, because foliage in all gardens is really important. And some of the vegetables really have great foliage, don't they?
Yes. And the other thing that's nice about vegetable gardens is you can grow things up on trellises. Think about runner beans and cucumbers and all kinds of. There's different kinds of zucchini you can grow up, and did I say runner beans? Probably, but.
Yep.
There's lots of things that love to grow up in a trellis, so that's really nice because it really adds drama and height into the garden.
Yeah, that is we had success, now it was against a fence, but we had success growing cucumbers on a chain this year, this past season. So they kind of went up, we hung a chain from the fence, because you know how cucumbers can really kind of take over a small space. So we went up, and it worked. I wasn't sure if it would work, and it worked, but it was really cool.
And Malabar spinach is a fabulous vine to grow over a chain link fence, because it really rambles, and it turns this gorgeous magenta in the fall. It's a wonderful edible crop, and it's an annual, so it'll just die back. So,
okay.
And of course, peas are good as well. Yes, things that cover up those ugly fences.
Yeah, absolutely, and that adds dimension. So that's another way to have some design features in a kitchen garden, by like you said, focal points and changing the heights and varying the textures and the foliage. I think, and the color. Those are great elements to really have it be a beautiful space instead of everybody's, kind of wants to hide it.
Exactly, because I think we're so programmed to think that vegetable gardens are someplace that have to be productive and efficient. And in my garden, it's just where I want to spend time. And I actually learned that when my children were young. We had a playhouse in the garden, and so when we'd go out, we watched our vocabulary. So instead of saying, we're going out to work in the garden, do you want to come? We'd say, hey, come on, let's go play in the garden. And it just made all the difference. That word work and play, I think we all have a visceral reaction to it. We all want to play. We don't want to work. So creating a playful garden is really the goal to making it a more enjoyable space.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, we do think of it that, don't we? And that's a great way to instill that love of gardening into it, the next generation as well.
Yes.
By being positive.
Yes. The other thing I've been doing, I'm working on a new book. My first book is called The Complete Kitchen Garden, and it features designs, theme garden designs, and recipes, because I'm a cook and a gardener, so I want to put the two together. And I have suggestions for things to plant that are really high on flavor, because I think there's a lot of choices in our seed catalogs, and having been a former seed catalog owner and tasted a lot of different varieties, we used to have tasting trials at our farm. I know that there's a huge difference in flavor between different varieties, and so really set up your own trial so you can taste the difference. But my new book that I'm working on, it's not going to be ready till 2019, so I'm not trying to plug it right now, but it's called The Complete Heirloom Garden.
Ooh.
And it features all types of heirloom plants that are really bred for flavor and fragrance, and just things that we may have forgotten, seeds that have been handed down through families. But the most important thing is you can save the seed, because they're open-pollinated, and you can save the seed and then share the seed with your friends or your family, or save on money by not buying seeds. But there's just a whole world of heirlooms out there, and it's really important that we remember about how to save seeds, because it's fun, actually. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, like you said, they've forgotten how to save seeds, and they keep worrying about what seeds they're going to buy next year, and they've got this trove sitting in their own garden. We have we have an email guest here, Ellen. Carla, you kind of spoke to it about the next book that you're coming out, but what book, she asks, do you have currently out?
What's that? I'm sorry, I can't hear you very well.
Oh, sorry. So we have an email write-in from Carla.
Yes.
And Carla says hello, and
Hi.
she's wondering what other books you might have out currently.
Well, The Complete Kitchen Garden was published in 2011 with Stuart Taborian Chang, or Abrams' book, which is a U.S. publisher. And my very first book, which is called From the Cook's Garden, is available on Amazon for not very much money because it's out of print. And so that can be ordered through Amazon. And I have another book called The Vermont Country Store Cookbook, which is all recipes. It has nothing to do with gardening, but it's also a beautifully produced book.
Excellent. And I've got a little excerpt about your book here, Ellen, and that you have a collection of 15 kitchen garden designs with full color illustrations, 100 seasonal recipes, and over 300 color photographs.
Right.
So that's the concept I was alluding to earlier. So I think it's a great. Not only are you talking kitchen gardens, but you're showing people how to design them with some illustrations and then incorporating the recipes, the food that you're growing into seasonal recipes. So I think it's such a great concept. Are you planning to transfer that same concept on the heirloom one as well?
Yes.
Excellent.
Yes.
Nice.
I have 15 themed designs that are actually based on historical gardens. So I'm reinterpreting like Monticello or the Colonial Williamsburg kitchen gardens, and Tasha Tudor. I have a wonderful chapter on old-fashioned flowers from Tasha Tudor's garden. And then I have recipes as well.
Excellent.
Yes, and if anybody wants to know my website, it's just ellenogden.com, and you can follow me on Instagram as well.
Excellent. Yes, that is great. And you have a Facebook page, or the book has a Facebook page.
Yes.
The book. Okay. Yeah. So back to the kitchen garden design aspect of it. Do you have like a preferred size of garden do you think that people should plan on, or is there a range because I think sometimes people don't realize how much things grow and how big some things get, right? So they start a little too small and then everything's cramped. Or people go the other way and don't realize they can't. They're growing more than they could possibly consume. So, in your experience with your designs, do you have a recommended size that you keep to?
Well, that's such a good question because, of course, it's going to depend on how much space you have.
For sure.
My house now sits on less than a quarter acre, and I didn't think I was going to have any room for a garden, but a well-designed garden, as you know, you can pack a lot in if you just start doodling around on paper and figuring out where it's all going to go. And so my kitchen garden now is 4 squares, because I like that 4-square design. It's a very classic style. It's called a parterre.
Mm-hmm.
And I use the 4 squares, and each one of those is a 10 by 10 with a 4-foot path in between. So that would make it, you can help me with the math here, 4, 10, 20, 25 by 25.
Okay.
Roughly what
Roughly, yeah.
Which is a ample garden for 2 to 4 people. I get so much out of it. So I think I wouldn't go any bigger than that. Honestly, I think that's plenty, as long as you're choosing not to grow what I call the space hogs. I don't grow squash.
Yes.
I grow just a couple of tomatoes.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely don't grow corn. I grow pole beans instead of bush beans because I get a lot from just 2 or 3 plants, and they grow up and over an arbor. One of the things that does take up quite a bit of space that I absolutely love growing is artichokes.
Ooh.
And I know that sounds odd in our cold climate, but there are new types of artichokes now that you can grow, and I'll get 3 to 5 beautiful little artichokes on each plant each year, and I just can't resist because we've lived without these wonderful exotic plants for so long. It's nice to have something a little special.
Yeah.
But I mostly grow salad greens. I grow collards and chard and kale, all kinds of kale, of course arugula, and lots of culinary herbs. Just, things like that I can't get at the farmer's market or I can't buy at the grocery store. Just those things I love to use on a daily basis in my own cuisine.
So are you, because I know what we call, the vocabulary is escaping me, but when you start from seed and then you kind of have to stagger the seed growing so that you always have plants coming up?
Succession.
Thank you.
Succession planting. That's such a good question, Joanne. Thank you. Yes, it's so important, especially when you're growing something like lettuce and salad greens, because they're a short crop. I mean, you plant something in April, and then it's grown and done by May. So I grow a succession of greens. I usually plant every week or every 2 weeks, at least a couple of rows. And the other thing is about mesclun. Now, do you know much about mesclun, growing greens? Have you done those yourself?
I haven't grown them myself. I certainly know them from the grocery store, but I have not grown them myself.
Yeah. Mesclun greens, it really means miscellaneous greens, and it's a combination of all different kinds of, arugulas and mustards and dill and fennel and lettuces and chicories that are all mixed together in one packet. So the concept is you sow them in a row, and then they'll start coming up, and all you have to do is harvest them with scissors and then toss them together in your salad bowl. They have so much nutrition packed in each plant, so much more than you're getting from those greens you buy in the grocery store. And so you're really going to want to taste the flavors. You're not going to want to put heavy dressings on it. But more importantly is lots of mixed packets they'll grow at staggered rates, so that the arugula will come up really fast and the mustard will come up very fast, but the lettuce will take a little longer and the fennel will take a little longer and the mosh will take a lot longer. So I always recommend that if you can choose maybe 10 different salad greens that you like and then sow them in separate rows, so that then harvesting them individually and then tossing them together in the salad bowl, you'll just have a nicer, more even blend. And most of these greens are cut and come again, so you'll just water them, and then they'll just re-sprout and grow again. You'll get a couple of cuttings out of them before you'll have to re-sow them.
I love that, cut and come again.
Yeah.
That is a great, that's a great term. Yeah, and I think a lot of people don't know that. Sometimes there are these little things, right, for people who haven't grown it before. They they think they have to, every time they pick some lettuce, then they have to start some seeds again, So that's a great tip to know that that's something that if you're just cutting it, and it will keep regrowing.
It will. I mean, it'll get hotter, so that's why you need, going back to your word, successive planting. It'll get hotter, so you want to make sure you have a new crop coming along. But I'll start early in the spring. I have a Zone 4 garden. Do you have zones in Canada? Do you know?
Yes, we do. We're Zone 5, 5B.
Oh, okay. So you're warmer than I am. And so I'll start my salad greens in April as soon as I can get into the garden, and then I'll just keep sowing them all summer long until November, practically.
Nice.
Yeah, that's something we should do more of for sure here. And I think there are people that do it. I know I'm not one of them, but we do have people that are really good at doing that and really trying to extend the season. And I know have some friends who even use cold frames.
Yeah.
Would you use that as well?
Oh, I love cold frames. I don't happen to have one, but I've always wanted one. For sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
definitely.
I don't know.
Like just this time of year, there's nothing like wonderful greens. They're such a tonic for your system. Going out and harvesting wild greens, those foraging for greens is such good, healthy thing to do for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't taste the same when it comes from a bag, does it?
No, not at all. I'm sorry to say, sprouts work pretty well, though. I'm a big fan of sprouts as well. Microgreens. Yes.
So we talked about the size, that size of 25 by 25 approximately. And if people don't have that much space, but want to do something smaller or something even in containers, do you have any tips or some suggestions for them?
Well, I think the most important thing is that we really haven't covered is soil. You know, what are you using for soil? And if you're growing things in containers and things, just using regular old potting soil, it'll grow, but it's not exactly going to be the best tasting, most nutritious crop. So I think it's important in a vegetable garden, as it is in a flower garden, to pay attention to the health of the soil.
Yeah, that is a good point. That's always been my concern about, growing in planters and containers.
Yeah, and because what feeds your plants ultimately feeds you. So it's really important to pay attention to those little details. But yet when you're growing in containers, sometimes you can't use really garden soil because it's too heavy. So it's maybe mixing your own with some compost and some garden soil and some potted soil or something, but just making sure it's organic. And it's a lot of potting soil comes these days that's infused with, fertilizers and stuff. I don't think you'd want to be growing food in those things necessarily.
Yeah, and certainly not the same soil, right, Matthew, that you're growing your flowers or your annuals in. You want a different type of soil.
Yeah, just like Ellen said, like a nice compost, something rich, and something lighter. And I know because I have a container garden, that's where I grow all my fruits and veggies. I have, from my garden center, a kind of like a vegetable triple mix. So it's not heavy like a garden soil, but it's got some nice compost in it, but some lighter elements as well. And I always mix that with a light C compost because it's nice and rich with nutrients. And I find it light enough for my containers to grow my strawberries and a couple tomatoes and some scallions and things. Yeah.
Right.
But like you said, Ellen, I think a lot of people overlook the soil. Very, very key component. And like you said, it's what you're feeding off of. You're eating what's good in the soil.
Right. Or something organic. Just look for organic because there's plenty of them. I mean, there's a wonderful one made in Maine called Coastal Maine, and it's made with crushed shells from lobster carcasses and all kinds of fish bones and stuff like that.
Yeah, we have one of those here too, I think. Yeah, it smells fishy, but
yeah. Look for organic because that's really the way we all have to be.
Yes, I think so. And I think your quote of what feeds your plants ultimately feeds you is really important because I think people go the easy route in the sense of doing the potting soil, but thinking, oh well, I'll just add more fertilizer to it to improve it, and really that's not the best way to go about it.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
There might be people who feel that works for them. But maybe seaweed solution or some organic fertilizer would work. But yeah, food is really, I think we've taken food for. There's so much about food that people used to know that we don't know anymore.
Yes.
It's kind of a relearning process, I think. But I'm glad that we're starting to pay attention.
Yes. Yeah. And I think if people think about that, when they think about, I'll just add liquid fertilizer, if they stop and think about, well, what I'm feeding my plant is what I'm ultimately taking in myself. I think it might cause people to create a little bit of a pause and really rethink what they're fertilizing and how they're growing their plants.
Yeah.
So, because I think the people who are wanting vegetable gardens are the people that want to do it right.
Yeah.
And there's so many reasons to grow a vegetable garden. I mean, it can be because you want better health, you want to save money. There are people who grow, like myself, I grow up for better flavor because I can't possibly buy the greens and the vegetables that I grow. And I think that so often we go to the grocery store and food is a little bit of a commodity. You look at a head of broccoli, for instance, and you can buy it for $1.49. So why would you take 95 days to grow it in your garden? That's a long time.
Yes.
But when you bring that head of broccoli in that you've been nurturing all that time, you have this special relationship with it, and you're not going to overcook it, and you're going to sit down and really enjoy the flavor and feel good about the fact that you grew this incredible vegetable.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's true when you think about it that way. So your focus on, we're talking about the flavors and the taste. So your book has over 100 recipes. Do you have a favorite, or do you have a go-to recipe that you're going to make, you really kind of tell people all about for what you grow in your garden?
Oh, I like that question. Well, I have a wonderful herb cheese bread.
Ooh.
That I particularly like, because I think we've forgotten how easy it is to make bread.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically water and yeast and
Some flour.
and then in my recipe it's a half a cup of chopped herbs. It doesn't matter what kind of herbs. It can be rosemary or marjoram or basil or dill or something, and then a half a cup of grated cheese. And it all just forms together into a nice dough, and then once that bread starts baking in the oven, the aroma that fills the air is just divine. You're going to have all your neighbors knocking on your door. So I love that recipe because it's very easy. And I usually slather it with what I call my boursin, which is an herbal cheese spread, which is essentially basil and dill and one other herb I can't quite remember, but it really doesn't matter. I think when you're cooking with herbs, you can use any fresh herb and it's going to taste good. And then you just whir it together with some cream cheese and a little bit of softened butter, and then just spread that on the herb.
Oh my goodness!
I'm hungry just thinking about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too.
So my recipes are pretty easy. I have to confess, I don't like to spend a lot of time in the kitchen. After a long day in the garden, I'm not really fond of standing on my feet any longer than I have to. So I've kind of created a bunch of recipes that are pretty easy and pretty simple and really make the most of the vegetables that you're growing. So that's really my method for most of the recipes. I have a wonderful salad in there, which is a couscous and arugula and lentil salad, and I kind of created it because arugula, sometimes you can have way too much of it. I mean, I know it's hard to think that you could ever have way too much of arugula, but it does happen. And so I created this vegetable salad, which is, the couscous and the lentils cook very quickly, and then you just add chopped tomatoes and some feta cheese and maybe some black olives and then some chopped arugula, and then you put a wonderful light lemony dressing over the whole thing, and it's a great salad that you make in the morning, and it just gets better by the end of the day, so then you have it for the evening meal.
Wow, that is great. So I think the whole concept of the book I think is wonderful because it really walks people through from start to finish.
Well, I hope so. I mean, it's nice of you to say. When I wrote the book, it was really because I wanted to have people who hadn't grown a garden, to know what it feels like to plant a seed and then watch it grow and then harvest it and eat it, because it's such a full cycle, and it's one of those things that it's all in our DNA. We just, so many of us have sort of don't think we can do it, but it's really pretty easy, and it's very, very satisfying on a deep, deep soul level.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I think I love the way you're thinking about the greens too, because I think it's more doable for the kitchen garden concept for people, especially just starting out, right? Because tomatoes can get complicated, and lots of other vegetables can really be a bit daunting. But starting with something that you're going to use every day, you're going to have a salad every day, possibly, right?
Oh, and think how healthy you'll be. I mean, just salads are.
Yeah.
If you had a salad every day, I think there wouldn't be any problems in the universe anymore. We would just all, I mean, I don't mean to say there wouldn't be any problems in the universe, but I think we'd all be eating better if we sort of gave up the hard stuff, like the tomatoes, like the zucchini, like those things that take up a lot of space and always have pests and diseases. I mean, salad greens are just so effortless, and they're so full of nutrition. They're so easy to grow.
Now, would you also consider spinach and Swiss chard in that as well?
Yes. I love spinach and Swiss chard.
Okay. That's something I'd like to try next year is to try.
Chard is what I consider to be the workhorse of the garden.
Oh.
I just feel that, again, using that word cut and come again, it's a beautiful plant. And yet it also needs to be cut. It's sort of saying, hey, eat me, because it really loves to be cut, because the more you cut, the more vigorous it grows. It's just remarkable.
Yeah, that is really interesting. I had no idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would think because of its beautiful foliage, you would resist cutting it almost, right?
Use it in flower vases.
That's right. Oh, that's good. Well, as we wrap up, I wanted to ask you a bit about what people could do with their kitchen garden to add some fun, some whimsy maybe.
Ooh, the word whimsy is one of my favorites.
Ooh.
Well, we talked just briefly about focal points. As you know, Joanne and Matthew, that focal points are something when you're designing a garden is really important, and it draws your eye into that space. And it might be something you put in the center of the garden or at the end of the garden. And so focal points for me in a kitchen garden would be like a really nice bench. Put a bench at the end of the garden or somewhere where you can actually sit and look at the garden. Or it can be a lovely little apple tree in the center of the garden that draws you into that space and provides a little shade. So adding that word whimsy, again, something that makes you smile. Maybe it's a wonderful antique arbor, or, some trellis kind of thing, or just some old watering can from your grandmother's garden or something.
Yeah.
But something that means a lot to you.
Okay.
And show it off. Put it on a pedestal. Bring it into the garden.
Okay, yeah, no, that's a great idea to have something like that, as a focal point. That's good. Do you have we're trying to do this new little segment on our show since we're landscape designers and wanted to have a bit more of a design focus, although much of the show was design focused on kitchen gardens.
Great.
But we wondered if wrapping up, do you have a favorite design tip for our listeners? As whether it's kitchen gardens or whether it's another type of garden that you also enjoy. And I know we covered a lot, so this might be, you can rehash something you've already said.
Oh, no, I think it's important to, the big question I think for all garden design is, where does inspiration come from? I mean, that's just the basic of art, the essential artful question.
Right.
And I think it's important to visit other gardens, get ideas. I mean, my best ideas have always come from other gardeners. I don't think I have an original idea in my head. Everything has been inspired by somebody else. So get out and look at other gardens, look at pictures, look at books, read about gardens. Really immerse yourself in gardens. Look at the history of gardens. I have learned so much about the four-square design, which is something that I use a lot in my garden design because it follows an organic rotation system very nicely, and it's a classic four-square parterre design, and it really goes way, way back in time to the earliest kitchen gardens. And I kept seeing this four-square throughout history when I started doing some research. And so I just think, just getting in, not thinking that you can just sit down with a piece of paper and come up with a design. Really just start thinking and looking at history and borrowing ideas from other gardeners.
Well, that's great. I think that's a really, because there's so many public gardens or garden tours and websites too. To be honest, it's not the same as being there, but there's lots of ways to be inspired. So thank you, Ellen. I think that was a great tip.
Oh, well, I hope it's helpful. It's been a delight talking to you both.
Yeah,
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I do want to mention again, so your website is ellenogden.com. That's where people can find you. And the book is called The Complete Kitchen Garden. And once again, I think it's fabulous that it contains 15 kitchen garden designs with full color illustrations. We didn't get to mention your art background, but Ellen's original background is in art. And also included in the book is 100 seasonal recipes and over 300 color photographs. So please, I hope our listeners will check out your book and check out your website as well.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Joanne, and thank you, Matthew, for having me on your show.
Well, thank you very much for taking your time this evening to join us and share all your exciting kitchen garden design experience and tips with our listeners.
Well, I hope everybody grows a little bit of food this year. I think it will be really enjoyable.
Absolutely, and I'm excited about the heirloom garden book. So
Yes.
we'll have to talk about that again.
Great.
So thank you once again for being with us, and it's been great having you join us down our garden path, like we like to call it. So thank you very much, Ellen.
Oh, good. Well, I appreciate it, and you have a wonderful show.
Thank you. Okay, bye for now.
Bye.
Well, that was a really interesting, and I think really simplified things for me. How about you?
I think it's really much easier to start growing just a little bit of food, or taking that first step into vegetable gardening or growing your own. Looking at a kitchen garden versus a massive, big garden, veggie garden that a lot of people think of.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think a big problem she mentioned initially was location.
Mm-hmm.
And because my challenge with growing greens and salads and lettuces is that they go to seed or they get ahead of me.
Yeah, they start to
So I forget about the whole cut and come again. And because I'm growing them in the back 40 in my back corner of my yard, not anywhere I need to go. And so when I finally think about it and I go, they've already gone.
They're already there.
They've already or overgrown. So having them in strategic spots closer to the house where I'm passing them more often,
Mm-hmm.
and really remembering that they are cut and come again. I think that's going to help me a lot. And I think it's going to help me with my designs as well.
Yeah, sure. Lots of great information and a lot of inspiration from Ellen herself as to where to get it from, as her garden tip was, for sure.
Excellent. Well, we hope everybody enjoyed that show. I know I've been missing everybody. I've been gone for a couple of weeks, but I'm back, and we've got some exciting shows coming up as well. So next Monday, we are also speaking with an author. So Jan Johnson is joining us once again. She's been on the show a couple times to talk about her book, Heaven is a Garden, but she's got a new book out called The Spirit of Stone. So we're going to talk to Jan about her book, Spirit of Stone, on Monday, March 11th. And then on March 19th, Susan Cavey.
Yeah, from Natural Insect Control, a Canadian company in the Niagara region, specializing in natural insects and other biological controls to make your garden happy and healthy all year round.
Excellent. And I think the timing on that is perfect.
Is
don't you?
absolutely perfect.
Yeah,
exactly.
for sure,
Going right
for
into
sure.
April.
Excellent. And so always please, as our season starts to ramp up, please follow us on social media. I know I'm losing my voice a bit.
You are.
So downtoearth.ca is my website, and my social media links for Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter are there. And Matthew, yours?
You can find me at naturalaffinitydesigns.ca. And again, all the email and other social media links are there as well. And through your website, and you can also follow through my website, you can reach all of our past shows.
Thank you.
On Down the Garden Path. We have a lot of great guests and lots of amazing information and inspiration waiting there for you to discover.
Yes, we're entering 4 years of the show. I know I did a number of them alone, and then Matthew joined me. So there are lots of shows and lots of episodes and topics for you to look at. So please check them out on my website. And if you, depending on your schedule, if you can't always make this time, we do. The show is now a podcast, so you can use your favorite podcast app and look for Down the Garden Path. And you can walk while or garden while you listen, or walk while you listen, or drive while you listen. So that is a great feature. I love listening to my my podcasts, not my own podcasts, other people's podcasts that I listen to on the go. So that's one of my favorite things. So check us out there. And so I'm really excited again about the next couple of weeks. Also, please let us know on those social media, or you can email us here at instudio101@gmail.com. If there's topics that you want to hear about, there's questions that you have. Design dilemmas, we talked about that earlier in our season.
Yeah.
So as the snow's starting to melt in your area, and if you're looking at a particular tricky spot and you want some problem solving, you can email us here at instudio101@gmail.com. You can send in a photo or two, and we can kind of help you with, or you can call in and tell us what your design dilemma is. So,
Exactly.
so definitely we want to, as landscape designers, we want to have a little bit more of a focus of design, and we want you to help us with that. So, yeah.
So that, I think, wraps up another wonderful show for the week. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in wherever you are. We always love to hear from where you are. I'm Matthew Dressing here with Joanne Shaw. And thanks again for joining us down the garden path here on Reality Radio 101.
Thank you for listening to Down the Garden Path with your host, Joanne Shaw and Matthew Dressing, right here on Reality Radio 101.